problem solving, simple interest. Okay, our objective for this video lecture, we want to solve simple interest problems. Okay, so the simple interest formula, you'll notice I did not put this underneath a we know, because you may or may not know this, but let's talk a little bit about the simple interest formula, because obviously if we want to solve simple interest problems, we need to know the simple interest formula. And here it is. The interest earned, or the interest paid, is equal to the principal times the rate, which is written as a decimal, times the time, the number of years. And I've detailed below here what each of these stand for. I is the interest. Interest is the amount that is paid to use money. So if you borrow money from the bank, it's the amount you pay the bank to use the money. If you lend your money to the bank, it's the amount the bank pays you to use the money. Okay? P, the principal. The principal is the total amount that's borrowed, that's loaned, or that's invested. Those are normally the three biggies. You either borrow money, you loan money, or you invest money. And it's, you could say that loaning money and investing money are the same thing. R stands for the rate. The rate is expressed as a percent. For example, you borrow money and you're charged a 2% rate, okay? It's the amount that you're charged or that you're paid for the use of the principal. Now, the rate is expressed as a percent, but when you do the math with it in this formula here, you need to express it as its decimal equivalency. So you need to express the percent as a decimal in this formula to do math with it. And finally, the variable t here is the time, and the time in the simple interest formula is expressed in years. So it's the number of years the principal is either borrowed, loaned, or invested. How long is the money in someone else's hands? Okay, let's just do a basic example that looks at that formula, okay? Just a quick example of applying that formula, and then we'll take a look at an example of a simple interest problem that's a little bit more complicated. So let's see here, example 1. Suppose Cody borrows $500 for 6 months at the simple interest rate of 9% per year. Okay? What is the interest that Cody is going to be charged? He borrowed money. He's going to be charged interest for borrowing the money. Okay, well, here's our formula. The interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. So the interest is equal to the principal. Well, he borrowed $500. That is the amount, the total amount borrowed, loaned, or invested is called the principal. So that's going to be $500. Okay. The rate, the simple interest rate that the bank charged was 9% per year. So the R is our 9%. And of course, we're going to express that as a decimal. As a decimal, that's 0.09. 9% is 9 over 100. 9 hundredths is 0.09. And he's doing this for 6 months. Well, our time, T, is years. So our years is going to be 1/2 of a year. 6 months is half of a year. Time is expressed in years in this simple interest formula. That's a calculation. So I'm simply going to pull out the calculator. If I can slide things up a little bit here. And I think I'm on there. Let's just do, that should be pretty good. Okay, 500 times 0.09 times 1/2, I'll put it in as 0.5, the decimal equivalency, and out comes $22.50. So the amount of interest that Cody's going to be charged is $22.50. Okay, so that's just a quick look at how the interest formula is used. And then a bit of an overview on what the simple interest formula is and what those variables stand for. Okay, let's talk about problem solving. Okay, so I've created this sheet here. How do you know what's the general overview of how to solve word problems? Okay, I created this maybe hoping to make things a little bit easier for you. Okay, and I've got 6 steps listed here. Okay, step 1. Read the problem carefully. You might have to read it 2 or 3 times to get a sense of what's going on. That's fine. What you're focused on initially is pay particular attention to the question being asked in order to identify what you're looking for. Okay? If you cannot identify clearly what you're looking for, you're never going to find it. And so we're going to be stuck at step 1. You have to be very clear in your understanding of what you're looking for. Write this down in thorough detail. The more detail, the better, including units perhaps. You know, don't be stingy on writing this down in the number of words you used. Okay, excuse me. Within this step, identify any relevant formulas you may need. Okay, so obviously we're talking about a simple interest problem. We're going to need a simple interest formula. Okay, but here's one for distance equals rate times time. That's for uniform motion. Here's a formula for the area of a circle if you're dealing with a circle's area, etc. And if you can, just kind of give a thought to what are some realistic possibilities for the answer. This could be as basic as, this answer has to be a positive number greater between 0 and 50. That could be as basic as that. You want to kind of get some sense of what you're looking for here. Should the number be positive or negative, for example? Should it be a large number? What are we talking about? Step 2, I'm a big fan of this. If it's possible, applicable, draw a picture. A picture, again, when applicable, never hurts. And so drawing it, the time it takes, it never hurts you, and it often makes a difference. Step 3. Okay, you've identified in step 1 what you're looking for. Step 3, you want to assign a letter to represent what you're looking for. Okay? And if necessary, express any remaining unknown quantities in terms of this letter or this variable. Okay? Now this one I have a remember down here. If you're able to, let's say you're asked to find 2 things. Well, if you can use one letter and then build on that one letter for the second unknown, you only need one equation to solve it. The more variables you have, the more equations you need. So if you have 2 unknowns and you use 2 separate letters, you need 2 equations to solve that. If you have 3 unknowns and you use 3 separate letters, variables, to represent those 3 unknowns, you need 3 equations to solve for those 3 unknowns. So if you can find a way to only have 1 unknown and then build off of that for other things, and we'll see an example of that coming up, you're only going to need 1 equation, and that's a nice thing to have. Step 4, make a list of known facts. For example, relevant formulas. Translate what you know into mathematical expressions, your words into math. Okay? And then you might find yourself putting these together in the form of an equation. Okay, maybe an inequality that involves these variables. The drawing can help you come up with this. Otherwise, a table or a chart can help you organize yourself. Okay, this one's probably the most difficult to come up with, because once you've got this figured out and you're going to put an equation together, then you're just solving the equation. So step 1 I think is the most important. Clearly identify what you're looking for. But step 4 may be the most difficult. for students. How to come up with that equation you need to solve. Step 5, things get pretty straightforward. Solve the equation, okay? And then step 6, check your solution, okay, with what you know from the problem. Does your solution agree with the facts? If it does, hey, congratulations, you're good. If it doesn't, well, go back, try again. Where did you go wrong, perhaps? Okay, so we're gonna refer to this as we solve a simple interest problem. Okay, I'm gonna pull this to the side and take a look at our simple interest problem. And here we have it. So example 2. Lexi has $70,000 to invest. Okay, and she wants an annual return of $2,800. She decides to invest some of the money in bonds, and the bonds pay 2%. And the rest of the money she's going to invest in stocks, and the stocks pay 7%. How much should be placed in each investment to achieve her goal? Okay, that's the first reading. Let's do a second reading. Lexi has $70,000 to invest. Well, that's called the principal. The amount of money you invest, you loan, you borrow. Okay, she wants an annual return. It's a dollar amount, so that's the interest that she wants to earn. That's the dollar amount that the return is the interest. It looks like she's going to do bonds and stocks. Bonds have a rate of 2%, and the stocks have a rate of 7%. And we want to remember that 2% is 0.02 when we do math, and 7% is 0.07. Okay, how much should she do? Okay, so there's a couple readings to go through. Let's take a look at step 1. Okay, step 1. All right, what are we looking for here? Okay, what's going on here? Okay, well, the question for step 1 is we want to know the amount of principal, the amount of her $70,000 to invest in bonds. That's one thing we want to know. How much should be placed in each investment? She has 2 investments, bonds and stocks. So one question is, what is the amount of the principal? The principal amount is $70,000 to invest in the bonds. Okay, that's one thing we want to know. The second thing we want to know is how much do we want to invest in stocks? So the amount of principal, and again the principal is $70,000 to invest in the stocks. How much should she put in each? That's what you're being asked. Okay, and as we think about this, realistic possibilities. Well, obviously, she tops out at $70,000. So our numbers that she's going to invest in bonds and stocks, well, the amount in bonds should be somewhere between 0 and 70,000, and the amount in stocks should be somewhere between 0 and 70,000. Okay, so if we get a number that's larger than 70,000, something's up, and we shouldn't get a negative. And of course, we want to know, hey, we got a relevant formula here. We're investing money. We have a rate, so we also know that interest equals P. Whoops, I do a capital P in my formula. PRT. Something else we know. Okay, so those are things we know. Okay, step 2. Can we draw a picture? Not really. Not much can be helped by trying to draw a picture of stocks and bonds. So in this case, I don't see a picture doing much for us. So let's go to step 3. A picture is always helpful if it's applicable. Okay, let's assign a letter to represent what we're looking for. And if necessary, okay, so here we are. Let's assign a letter, a variable, to represent what we're looking for, and if necessary, express any remaining unknown quantities in terms of the same letter. Again, if you can do it in one letter, one variable, you only need one equation. If you do 2 variables, you need 2 equations, etc., etc. Okay, let's take a look here. These are our 2 unknowns. Okay, so let's see. We need to know bonds and stocks. All right. Well, I'm going to say let's let B equal the amount, and I'll abbreviate that AMT, of principal to invest in bonds. Okay, I just chose that one. Why not? B, the amount of the principal to invest in the bonds. Okay, but I also need, this is also an unknown. Okay, but I know something about this. If B is the amount you invest in bonds, well, I could just say S, but then I have two variables and I need to come up with two equations. But if I were to use this and think to myself, okay, the total is 70,000. If B is the amount I put in bonds, then 70,000 minus B is the amount of principal that will be invested in stocks, to invest in stocks. So I was able to take these two, I was able to look at these two unknowns and identify them with one variable. Okay, and that's a nice thing. That means I only need one equation to do math, for which to do all to solve, I guess is what I should say. So that's kind of key. It's nice if you can do that. Okay. Okay, so step 4, and this is the hard step. I think you can still see on my paper. Yeah. Okay, step 4 says, let's go back to here. Step 4, make a list of all your known facts. We're going to translate them into expressions. We're going to wind up with an equation. The drawing is helpful. The drawing didn't make any sense here. A table or chart might be helpful. Let's take a look. Okay, so what do I know? I know that P is equal to 70,000. The principal is $70,000. Okay, so this equals the amount invested in bonds and stocks. So when I add up the amount I invest in bonds and stocks, I get 70,000. I know that. I know that my interest that we're looking for here, she wants a return of $2,800. So she's looking for $2,800. Okay, so this is equal to the bond interest plus the stock interest, because she's going to invest in those two vehicles. When I add the interest up from bonds and stock, Lexi's looking for $2,800. Okay, what else do I know? I know the rate, and I'll put a little B here for bonds. The rate, well, I'll tell you what, we'll put it in parentheses, it's a little clear. We know the rate for bonds is 2%. It says right here, the bonds pay 2%. The rate for bonds is 2%, and we know we're going to do math with that, and that's 0.02. Slide up a touch here. I think I'm still on the screen. Okay, I know the rate for stocks, and that rate is 7%, and as a decimal, that's 0.07. Okay, and I know my time. Well, she wants an annual return, so my time is 1 year. We're looking for this much each year. That amount of interest in 1 year. Okay? So let's think for a second. Okay? It looks like I've got two unknowns. I got to do some bonds and some stocks, and I've got rate for bonds and stocks. So I'm going to come up with, I'm looking at two of these. I have interest that's going to happen twice. Okay, because this interest is equal to the interest for bonds plus stock. So what I have here is interest for bonds, okay, is equal to, well, PRT, right? The interest for the bonds is PRT. Well, the principal for the bonds is B right here. That's the principal for the bonds. The rate for the bonds is 0.02, and the time for both is 1 year. And I know the interest amount for the stocks, again, this is PRT, and that's equal to the principal for the stocks. Well, this is the amount of principal to invest in stocks, and that's this number. I'll put it in parentheses just to kind of keep it together. Times the rate for stocks, and that's 0.07. And again, we're doing this 1 year, if we're looking for both, times 1. Okay, so that's nice to know. Okay, we got that stuff figured out. Okay, now can we come up with an equation? What do I know about the interest that I earn from bonds and the interest I earn from stocks? Well, I know that interest this equals the bond interest plus the stock interest. It better equal $2,800. Okay, so the interest from bonds plus the interest from stocks, and be careful, I'm just kind of writing these parentheses to show you that I'm not multiplying anything here. I'm just putting this down. It is interest from bonds plus interest from stocks. And that's going to equal $2,800. Okay, so let's substitute and solve. Okay, well, the interest in the bonds is right here. This is 0.02 times B, 0.02 times B times 1, plus the interest from stocks. Well, that's, I'll just write it out. This is 0.07 times 70,000. Did I get that right? Yep. Minus B, and I'm going to get 2,800. So there we are. Okay, so now we're at step 5. We got to solve this. Okay, so that you can see step 4 took a lot. Okay, this is the most difficult step. What do we know? How do we put together the necessary expressions? These two are expressions, and then coming up with the equation that we're going to solve. That's where most of the thinking has to go. Okay, let's solve this. Left side can be cleaned up. 0.02b plus 0.07 times 70,000. I have no idea. 0.07 times 70,000. I got that right. I got 4,900 minus, well, 0.07 times negative b is 0.07b equals 2,800. Looks like I can clean up the left side with my variables these can be combined. 0.02b minus 0.07b is 0.05b plus 4,900 is equal to 2,800. I've got my variable on the left, so I'll move my constant to the right. I think I'm still on the paper. I am. Good for me. All right. Minus 4,900. That's my 0. Negative 0.05 times b. 2,800 minus 4,900. Pull my calculator out. Negative 2,100. Divide both sides by negative 0.05 to get b by itself. And I get b comes out to be, okay, let's see here, negative 2,100 divided by negative 0.05, 42,000. 42,000. So my paper still? It sure is. So this part wasn't bad. You know, doing the solving wasn't bad at all. B comes out to be $42,000. And again, we know from up here, let me slide up just a touch, B is the amount of principal to invest in bonds. We want to invest $42,000 in bonds. Okay, so let's continue to, we had 2 unknowns, so let's do that. So we know here, I need another piece of paper because I ran out of room. We want to invest $42,000 in bonds, and because we built our second unknown using the B, 70,000 minus B is the amount of principal to invest in stocks. So we'll go back to here. and we'll say invest 70,000 minus 42,000, which equals, again, I need my calculator, 70,000 minus 42,000, invest 28,000 in stocks, and we think that's correct. Let's check it. Let's do step 6. Okay, so step 6, and we were told in the problem, so I'll go back to the problem. We were told in the problem that you're going to invest some in bonds at 2%, stocks at 7%, and you better get 2,800. Okay, so let's see here. So you're going to invest 2% of the bonds, of the amount invested in bonds, plus 7% of the amount invested in stocks. This should equal, I think it's equals $2,800. Okay, so this is the bond return. This is the stock return. Does it equal 2,800? Let's take a look here. 0.02 times 42,000 plus 0.07 times 28,000. And I came up with $2,800. So yes, I get 2,800 on both sides, which tells me I like my answer. And of course, the numbers look pretty good. They should be less than 70,000, and they should be split apart a little bit. So we're pretty good. So there you have it. The beginnings of some problem solving, and how to solve simple interest problems.